There's this place in Seattle called Communion. It's a restaurant and also a vibe. I visited on a Sunday, so there were church folks here with moms and dads and their kids, right alongside the young, trendy brunch crowd. There's no taste like home is their tagline, and it does kind of feel like Grandma's house on Thanksgiving.
This is the hush puppies and grits, and these are the cheesy grits, and there's 2,000.
Chef Kristi Brown owns this place with her son Damon, and they've hit on something.
I think anything that's important happens around food. Everything that's important happens around food. Political conversations, change conversations. You can't even bring people to the table. The first thing you ask is there going to be food there?
They were named one of the top 12 restaurants in the world by Condé Nast Traveler. And Kristi says that's probably because they're also about more than just a good meal.
People are hungry for more than just food. They are so hungry for belonging. They're hungry for safety. Like, there's so many things.
You know that feeling when you finally get something you've wanted for so long that the joy of it in the moment is tempered by the fear of losing it? That's kind of what Communion feels like. It's a Black restaurant in a white city. The stakes are high. These kinds of spots, as we know, are far and few between. The pressure of keeping a place like this around for the people who need it most, that's compounded by the reality that the Black and brown people who work at Communion, who create these soulful dishes, they're carrying around traditions while also trying to make a living. Chef Kristi Brown says she understands all of that and how the drumbeat of race and racism can weather the body.
We meditate before every meeting. We had a breath coach come in last week and do a breathing exercise with these guys. Like, it's so important because everybody's so unsettled. Everybody's so outside of themselves. And it's just like, yo, dog, like, if we don't start here, I know that if I start here, right? I got some folks with some kids, like maybe that'll help their kids.
How do we move out of survival mode and into a place where our bodies are strong? What does nourishment mean for us outside of white notions of what our Black bodies should be? That's the topic we're taking on this episode of Truth Be Told. Stay with us. We ended our last season of Love in March talking to Nap Ministry founder Tricia Hersey, who preaches that rest is a social justice issue and our birthright. This was a revelation for me because, like so many of us, my worth is often wrapped up in how much I can do on any given day. So after talking to Tricia, I made this promise to myself that I was going to rest more. But I'm going to be real, it has been so hard, and so I have been thinking that I might need to take a few steps back to connect with my body before I can truly listen to what it's saying to me. So to do that, I decided to call up Resmaa Menakem. Resmaa is a somatic therapist, and he helps get people on a path to healing historical and racialized trauma that he says is carried in our bodies and our souls. He has a new book out called The Quaking of America, an embodied guide to navigating our nation's upheaval and racial reckoning. Resmaa has been on this show before, so we picked up our conversation talking about the similarities between his work and Tricia Hersey's message as part of the Nap Ministry. I kept thinking about you and what we talked about on this show right after George Floyd was murdered, about listening to the messages in our bodies and what they're telling us in the face of racial trauma. It almost feels like your message and Tricia's messages are two sides of the same coin. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely. When Tricia talks about the idea that just a nap is a revolutionary act specifically for Black women, in my workshops, one of the things that I say is that Black women in this country's growth edges is not in doing stuff. It's in not doing stuff, right? That the growth edges for Black women is not picking up everything. And in reality, taking a nap for a black woman, as Auntie says, reclaiming her time. A black woman reclaiming her time is a revolutionary act because this country has been taught that the black woman's body is where we do all of our dirt. The black woman's body is where we do all of the labor. The black women's body is where we deal with our own hurts and our own pains. Rather than dealing with them ourselves, we project them onto black women's bodies.
Resmaa, I'm going to try to get through this conversation without crying, because when you talk about this, when you talk about black women's bodies and our roles in this world, I mean, of course, it hits me really hard. Like the edges are in not doing. That is the work that I'm trying to get to.
Yes.
You are known for coining the term white body supremacy. You say that white body supremacy is the air we breathe, the water we drink, the foods we eat, the systems and the structures that govern us. It's everything. This is heavy. This is heavy, Resmaa.
It is heavy, but let me say it to you like this, sis. It's also heavy to carry around living and working and loving and moving under the rubric that the white body deems and has deemed itself the supreme standard by which all bodies humanity shall be measured structurally and philosophically. That is a heavy notion, and every other body is a deviance from the standard of not race, but humanity. Is Sister Tonya a human being or not? Is Brother Resmaa a human being or not? And the answer in terms of this question in this country in particular is that no, they are not human. Understanding those pieces that were put into place as institutional principles that is still wreaking havoc on our bodies and weathering our bodies as we speak.
Right, right. This concept, I think we all on some level understand. You just know it if you're a person of color in this country. But the concept blows my mind because at the time we spoke, I was putting together so much about how trauma manifests itself in my own body, and more specifically, what that trauma looks like externally in our communities. High rates of high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart problems, depression. Are these manifestations of white body supremacy?
Absolutely, 100%. So there's a study that was done a number of years ago called the ACEs study, Adverse Childhood Experiences. The adverse childhood experiences said was that if you had 4 more adverse childhood experiences in your life, then you in all likelihood would die at least 7 years earlier than anybody else, right? Now, the way that they counted in that study, adverse childhood experiences, is once you came on the planet, right? But what about if you were born to a body? What about if the adverse childhood experience was intergenerational? What about if it was persistent institutional and then our own personal lived experience all combined to give us this sense of like mental drag or like the next shoe is getting ready to drop? What about if you come from a people that were raped legally for 250 years? That for me would count as an adverse childhood experience because my great great grandparents had to organize around the feralness and the brutality, and they had to override that. So by the time it gets to me, I just sense it as notions. I sense it as a bad feeling, dread and pale over everything.
One of the things I'm just struck by, I just want to make a point to say, is your use of the word bodies. I mean, you're using it to enforce our humanity, but the term can be seen as dehumanizing. I mean, is that what you're doing in reclaiming that word and using it in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The reason why I use that word is because when people talk about white supremacy, many times you can just like hear it and sense it, that it is an intellectual exercise when they're saying that. Like people say white supremacy is bad. Everybody nods, right? But if you ask people what that means, they'll give you the definition for bias. They'll give you the definition for prejudice. They'll give you all of these definitions when you say white supremacy. Somebody being bad to each other, somebody using the N-word. That's what people believe white supremacy is. One of the things I tell people is that no, whiteness and the idea of white people is a social construct, but it is a social construct with teeth. It is a social construct like I will redline you to death. I will put an incinerator next to your neighborhood because that's where put incinerators is next to bodies of people who we don't really have any value for. And so when I say body, I'm saying the body is where all of this charge and trauma around race is posited. And so if you don't say white body supremacy, people genuflect to an intellectual argument or an intellectual exercise, but not really how this stuff lands with great force upon the body.
Mm-hmm. In this context, though, I'm thinking about subverting white body supremacy. What does the idea of nourishment in this context mean for you?
That's a beautiful question. Racism and white body supremacy is as much physical as it is mental, right? And that if you don't condition your body to be able to withstand and deal with the 400-year charge of race, then it will push you into protective responses. So for instance, one of the things I know about you is that you've been doing this work a very long time. You've been a broadcast, you've been doing work around news, you've been doing this for a very long time. I would venture to say that when you first started doing this, you sucked. Right?
That's right.
Real
talk.
You know, when you start something, even if you love it, when you start something, you don't understand the nuance of things. You don't understand modulation. You don't understand how to really do it. People can say, well, here's what you do, but you're going to have to get some reps, some conditioning in before you actually can use it. It's the difference between playing a note and making music. And when it comes to understanding your body, people think that they can just sit down at a piano and be Mozart. And what I've been trying to tell people is that, look, you have to literally get in the gym. And I'm not saying gym as in, barbells and stuff like that. I'm saying get in the gym, get into the swing of conditioning yourself by understanding how race is showing up. What Sister Tricia and what I'm trying to do is tell particularly black folks is by the time you get to overwhelm, you've already taxed and weathered your body to the place that the only thing that you can do is shut down. What we're saying that you can do is actually nibble on little pieces that show up throughout the day that actually help the body to be able to recognize and tend to what's showing up before you have to collapse.
Can we talk about a few of your body practices?
Absolutely.
One chapter of your book that I'm sitting with is this idea that our bodies both broadcasts and receives energy. Ooh. I'm a deeply feeling person. I can feel energy of those around me in such a way that many times I take on that energy, and I feel it most in my gut, my literal stomach. That I actually learned from you after we talked the last time. I was like, okay, this is what all these stomach problems are about.
That's it.
What are some practices we can take in this regard?
Yeah. Things like when I'm working with black bodies, with indigenous bodies, with other bodies of culture, one of the first things I help them reclaim is this idea of orientation. When you're born into a society where this pigmentocracy, where the white body has deemed itself the standard of humanness, it is a particularly disorienting notion to move around in this world. And so one of the first things that I help bodies begin to reclaim is this sense of orienting to the here and now first. So one quick practice that I help people kind of excavate and cultivate is either closing or softening your eyes and then just listening to what's behind you without turning your head. Noticing if you're picking up on little hums or little things. Then begin to focus directly behind you and then begin to have your focus with soft eyes. Just notice your ears picking up on the left side. And the reason why I do that is that when you come from a people like mine and like ours, one of the things that happens is that there is a setup not only in the belly, but in the hips. It's what I call the psoas muscle. The muscle that's responsible for getting you to either flee something or fight something or lock down on something, right? And if you've been brutalized for a long period of time, where you come from people that have been brutalized, that locking down, that fear and that bracing, right, can almost look like anxiety. It can almost look like dissociation. And what I want people to do is start to begin to orient to their body and the environment right now, so they can begin to discern, oh, this is what my body experiences when I'm picking up on resource. This, I'm able to discern, this is what my body experiences when I'm picking up on real horror and terror that's either historical, intergenerational, persistent, institutional, or my own personal lived experiences. But that takes practice.
All these guys are running off adrenaline. You can take a second. If you already running late, then one more second ain't gonna hurt nobody. Well, Chef, I'm gonna meditate over here where No, you're not. Come on, we're gonna sit down. Cause you all off track. You barely got to work today. Yeah, no, I will pull somebody off the line if I need to. Cause I don't care. I care about these guys first.
Yep. It takes practice. You saying this made me think of something else. You've been on your book tour, so you're starting at the beginning of your book tour. You were in New York. I know you saw this when you were traveling. I saw it traveling just recently. Nobody is in the moment. Like, everybody is focused on their phones. I wasn't anywhere where someone was not looking down. I feel like, what you're saying, sometimes we think, okay, that's like when I'm alone by myself at home or something. But I'm also thinking about like just being present in the world. And yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
The way that white body supremacy actually functions has two different energies, and it's urgency and stuckness at the same time.
Ooh.
Yeah,
go on.
Right there. So there is this sense that if you rest, especially in the black body, then there's a piece of fraudulence or a piece of imposter or a piece of laziness that shows up in us that was instilled in us through the beating and the raping and the plantation ethics, right? And so that urgency and that stuckness will get us to give up ourselves and our own bodies in order to make it to the next day. Let me give you an example. So one of the hardest things for me that I've just learned within like the last 5 months, right, is that my urgency shows up for me the moment my eyes wake up in the morning. So my eyes pop up and my butt shifts out of the bed and I got my feet on the floor and I'm ready to go. Where's my list? Let me do this. Right. And what that has done for me is that it creates bracing in me. It creates this clenching in my belly, these clenching in my jaws, this kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop, the next bad thing to happen. And so one of the hardest things for me to do that I started doing, sis, is when my eyes wake up, I tell myself now I am not going to get out of bed in urgency. I want to get out of bed in resource. So when my eyes first open up and that urgency, like get up, let's go, I purposely now just lay there. And the way I know it was so kind of intertwined in me is that as I'm laying there, all of these things start popping up like lazy. You got stuff to do. You got and if I had it, when I pop up and just do it, I don't have to contend with the quaking of that.
That's
but
right.
Laying there, I have to contend with the quaking. I'm like, oh, okay. And some days I can do it and I can lay there and then allow it to move. And then I notice the resource and then I pop up. But some days I can't hold it and I get up and then I soul scribe on it and I go I work on it. I'm constantly practicing on unhooking my worth to the urgency.
Yep. That's what you mean about this being a practice, right? You as a healer,
That's
it's
right.
constant work as well. Have you seen a reluctance in people wanting to care for themselves? What are some of the roadblocks of hearing?
Yeah.
Like when people hear this?
Yeah. One of the roadblocks is this idea of specifically in black bodies, and specifically in black women's bodies, is this idea that not having something to do is a sign of shiftlessness and laziness.
Yep.
Right? That tending to yourself is selfish. Right?
Also, it's a luxury. Can I afford to do it?
And a luxury. That's a luxury, absolutely. And what I try and tell people is that it is not a luxury to reclaim yourself. It's actually the thing that will help you live longer. The whole national park system is based on white leisure.
Oh, right. Yes.
Right?
Yep.
It is relatively new that Black bodies even talk about things like leisure. Right?
Look.
And that's because of the brutality of the structure. So when I'm saying reclamation, I am saying that Black bodies have to begin to reclaim those pieces of joy.
Yeah.
Indigenous bodies have to begin to reclaim those pieces around softness and gentleness and tenderness, starting with ourselves first.
You and I spoke about this, but just the other week I spent time in Detroit hanging out with my 95-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
I'm cleaning the last part of these greens, and I'm looking for the spot.
And we cleaned and cooked greens together. We sat and talked for hours.
Nourishment is food that's going to nourish your body. It can be tender love and care also.
And one thing I'm always struck by is, we're always talking about the present and the future, but our elders in many ways practice so much of what you're talking about, but they didn't have the language for it, like the ability of creating systems for self-preservation. I see that in a way as a starting point, but the work that you're talking about feels like it's the next step in this evolution of like understanding this. Do you see it that way?
Yes, I do. I really do. But when I take the next step, I still got my hands clasped in my elders' hands. So it's not taking the next step with my hands not connected to them. It's taking the next step with them guiding me and being there and loving me along the path, right? And sometimes when we think the next step or handing somebody the baton, you have to let go of the baton. I don't have a tendency to look at the work that we do. The work that you do is standing on the shoulders of Fannie Lou Hamer. The work that you do is standing on the shoulders of Zora Neale Hurston, right? That's so my hand is connected to my elders and connected to my ancestors. Not I need to let go of it in order to prosper and stuff like that. And so I think about this idea that when we're talking about healing, and we're talking about a collective healing, it is literally going to involve us reclaiming parts that were that tried to be ripped from us. We have to reclaim those parts. So, let me give you an example. So, like humming, right?
My grandma whistle and hum all day. I want to hear about your grandma.
That's it. So that humming, sis. The humming is actually a scientifically proven thing to help alleviate pieces of stress. When you hum, it literally activates the vagal nerve. The vagal nerve is the nerve that comes out of the brainstem, hits the face, hits the throat, and stuff like that. Well, when my grandmama's humming, it's doing the same thing as when monks om. When monks go, Om. The reason why it sounds soothing is because the vibration of it is literally vibrating parts of your vagal nerve, right? So when I used to lay in my grandmother's arms and she'd be rocking back and forth and she'd humming, and my ear is on her chest as she's humming, both of our vagal nerves are being vibrated and there's a synergy that's being developed, right? That is also a practice. Right? That is a practice that we can reclaim, that we know to be true, to help soothe us and help to work with that thwarting energy enough so possibly joy can emerge in a more fuller sense. Right?
Resmaa Menakem, as always, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, sis. I appreciate you for having me.
And so I just think that like all of those things, finding spaces for stress, finding space to de-stress, like understanding what's happening in your body, like all of those things are so important as a part of a bigger picture.
Anybody else have a whistling or humming grandma or grandpa? My grandma is always whistling, and it makes so much sense that when we activate the vagal nerve that Resmaa is talking about, it does so much for our bodies. It actually brings our heart rates down and improves digestion. That is amazing. I want to know what discoveries you've made that help you center yourself and your body. Give us a call at 424-279-8475 or email me at tonya@deartbt.com. I read all of your emails, so I'll be looking forward to it. You can also use the hashtag DearTBT on Twitter or Instagram. One word. Truth Be Told is a production of TMI Productions. And hey, we have 2 new team members this season. Our senior producer, B.A. Parker, our editor, Phyllis Fletcher, along with our amazing members, Aisha Brown, Enrico Benjamin, Adama Imeson, and in association with Fearless Media. Our theme music is Rest by Otis McDonald and Zora's Moon by Candace Hoyes. Special thanks to Rochelle Roberts and Sam Rafelson. And thank you to Heising Simons and the Ford Foundation for funding Truth Be Told. I'm Tonya Mosley. Until next time.
The top 4 ingredients in life, in your body, top 4 atoms in order: hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen. Those 4 atoms. Do you know what the top ingredients are in the universe? The top 4 chemically active atoms in the universe? Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen.
I am the universe.
Yes! So upon learning that you're not special because you do not contain special ingredients, is the same fact that includes the idea that while we live in this universe, the universe lives within us. We are special because we're the same.